Have you ever wondered how some agents will have sustainable business month after month after month and year after year after year? Do you know why that is? Well, I'm going to share with you in this video exactly how they do that.
Hi everyone, Robert Villanueva here. Over a buyer's market.
You can't tear me down.
And of course, as always, I'll see you at the top.
Well, the way that the agents are able to build a sustainable business month after month after month and year after year is they build a solid foundation. And that solid foundation primarily comes from their personal database. And that personal database is, of course, all of the people that have helped us in the past. I'm going to break down to you the who, the what, the when, the where, the why, the how, and I'll even throw in the bonus, the if, about how to be able to build this business through specifically your database. So let's go ahead and break that down. Now, before we go into that, I do want to, of course, encourage you to please subscribe, like, comment, but most importantly, if you can actually share this, I'd really appreciate that. Continuing to grow and add more videos is my ultimate goal, of course. So let's start with the who, okay? As far as the who is concerned, who should be in our database? Who are these people? Well, let me start with the opposite side of that. Who should not be in our database? The people who should not be in our database are basically these collection of names and numbers of all of these random people that you have no clue who they are. And that's a very common thing. Now, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but this isn't what I'm talking about today. The people who should be in your database, there's 5 primary categories. Number 1 is your past clients. Now, if you're newer to the business or new to the business and you don't have any past clients, well, you can actually take the past clients from a previous job if you want to look at it that way. So if you have a sales background, you could take some of those people. I had the good fortune of having a little bit of a sales background in retail. And in retail, I actually adopted a handful of those people that were my past clients from the retail side of things. Number 2, our family. Okay, I get it. I understand. Don't want to bug our family. But if you really want to build this thing, it's going to come from your family. Number 3 is your friends. Your friends are going to be part of this entire equation. Number 4 is basically with what we call our vendors. Vendors are basically people that help you in your business along the line of, depending on the state you're in, escrow, attorney, title, a lender, home warranty, plumber, electrician, roofer, all of these people that help you in the real estate business. The 5th one is what we call our affiliates. Affiliates are basically people that you have some sort of business relationship with. I want you to think of people you exchange money with. Who do you exchange money with? Well, think along the line of your dentist, doctor. How about barber, nail salon, mechanic, dry cleaners? Think of people like that. If you give them money and you're supporting them, well, it should be reciprocated. Those are the people who should be in your personal database. But there's also a 6th category, and the 6th category is basically people that you can adopt. You're talking to people, you're prospecting, you're knocking on doors, you're speaking to these people, and you ask them, is it okay if I include you in my personal database? These people, I'm going to ask of you to be very careful as quickly as they come into your personal database. I want you to extract them. Now, what do I mean by that? Some people will be really nice. They're going to be polite. They don't want to be rude. And they're going to say, sure, Robert, you can add me to your personal database. But then they never pick up. Okay. So if they're picking up, they're able to, stay in contact. They're able to give you information. They're, basically being supportive. Keep them in there all day, every day. But the people that aren't responding, get rid of them as quickly as you possibly can. Now, why this is important, I'm going to explain to you later on in this video as to the importance of this. But for right now, let's just completely eliminate those people. So again, those are the 5 key categories. Now, let's talk about the what. What do we tell these people? Okay, what do we tell our friends? What do we tell our family? What do we tell all of these people in our database? Well, the one thing I don't want you to do, this is the problem where most realtors, unfortunately, don't call their database because they feel as if the one of two things is happening. Number one, they're bugging them. Has this ever happened to you? Yeah, it's pretty common. And number two is their ego. And their ego shows up from a direction of, I don't want to look desperate. I don't want to look as if though I need the business. Well, the problem is you do. So we have to be able to create some version of value. So your ego plays a big part in this. And then the other thing, which also is part of the ego, is we don't want to look stupid. And the reason why we find ourselves in this position where we don't want to look stupid is because we don't know what to tell them. Okay. Now, going back to what do we tell these people? What we need to tell these people is be able to provide some version of value. Now, I want you to think of as an example, if you actually had a stockbroker, okay, you had somebody who was sitting there trying to give you advice in regards to what stock to buy, okay? If you had a good friend that sat there and told you 10, 15 years ago and said, hey, you know what, Robert? You should really look into this company. It's kind of having a little bit of a funny name. It has nothing to do with the rainforest, but it's a company called Amazon. I don't know. If I was you, I'd probably invest a couple of bucks in some stock. You likely would be very grateful because of that. Okay. So what I'm getting at is you want to be able to provide value. The other part of it is that people do want to help you. Think of if you actually had a friend that sat there and said, hey, Robert, I just opened up this restaurant and I want you to invite all of your friends and family and you can have dinner on me. I just want to be able to have the exposure. Now, what would I do? I know I would actually sit there and, of course, try to get as many people to come and support, of course, my friend's business. People do want to help you, but we have to ask. And if we don't ask, we get things along the line of, well, I thought you were too busy. I thought you were doing perfectly fine. I didn't want to bother you. The way we avoid this is we have to be able to go back. Like I mentioned, we have to be able to provide that value. I'm going to ask of you, here's what we do. You're going to create what I call is a menu of topics. What's a menu of topics? Well, they're going to be things as to what you're going to call your database about. It's important we understand this. This menu of topics of whatever you put on there, you're going to pick one topic, and I'm going to give you a couple of examples. You're going to pick one topic and you're going to call everybody in your database to give them that same benefit. What are some examples? Well, people want to know about the interest rates. People also want to know if there's any law changes. How about if there's an amazing loan program that's right around the corner? People want to know about that. How about just simply giving them a quarterly or a yearly update? That's definitely beneficial. This is what's taken place this last year. This is what's taken place in the last quarter. How about the benefits of a trust? Have you ever talked to your friends, family, past clients about the benefits of a trust? Okay, avoiding, of course, probates. How about a vendor list? Well, I gave you a few examples. The irony of it is that the 6, 7 examples that I just gave you, that's 2 years worth of conversations to be had. You can add a few more if you want, and I can continue to go down that list, but I don't want to be that coach that enables you because you have to create your own version of menu of topics. Okay, so I'm going to encourage you to look at the things with what can create value for your people, your audience. Okay, now again, if you're liking this video, I'm going to encourage you, please subscribe, please like. I welcome comments, good or bad. I'm always looking for critique as well. But most importantly, if you can actually share that, I'd really appreciate it. Let's move over to the win. What do I mean by win? Well, when should we call them? How often should we call them? Well, what we should do as far as calling them is concerned is we should call them 4 times a year. Okay. Now, people will say, well, Robert, can I text them? Sure, of course you could text them. Can I mail them? Of course. What about email them? Yeah, absolutely. Why not? Be my guest. But you're never going to replace those with the 4 calls a year. Now, we can go into the mastery of this, which I'm not. I'm just trying to keep it very basic. I'm going to go into a mastery version of this in a later video. But in that, you're going to call them 4 times a year. Okay, you got to call them 4 times a year. And when you call them 4 times a year, of course, you should be able to extract business. Well, why do we do this? Okay, and I get this all the time. And trust me, I'm working with coaching clients that are making 100, 250, 500,000, a million, 2 million, and even $3 million a year. And I still get this. And what ends up happening is that they'll say things along the line of, Robert, they already know I'm a realtor. Why should I call them and bug them? Here's what happens. I'm going to paint a little bit of a picture for you. And here's the picture. I have my good friend, works at a warehouse as an example. Well, that friend has a coworker, and the coworker says, Hey, Joe, you know what? We're in the market. We're thinking about buying a home, blah, 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 all this other stuff. Well, Joe, of course, thinking he's doing a good job, which in, the example that I'm giving, it's actually a pretty decent job. And Joe says, Well, hey, I got a good buddy of mine. He's a realtor. So if you need one, let me know. Well, Joe tells me, I see him at a party. He's like, Hey, I got a good friend of mine. I told him about you. And it stops and ends there. Or how about this one? This is one of my personal favorites. Hey, Robert, I gave somebody one of your business cards. I know that this is kind of like an omen. It's almost like the moment that somebody hands out our business card, they're not going to call us. That's almost like a guarantee, right? So by us calling them, we start to, for a lack of better words, is we start to train them. Okay. So now when I give Joe a call, Joe, hey, it's Robert. This is a business call. Just calling you. Want to give you a quick little update what's going on with the real estate market. Now, Joe sits there and says, here's the example that I want you to use. Joe now says, well, hey, one of my coworkers was talking to me about possibly buying, possibly selling, possibly investing, whatever it may be. Well, now I can get the opportunity to engage in that. Joe, why don't I give him a call? Let me see if I can be of some help. Okay. Or the worst part about that, the opposite, is where I do speak to Joe, and Joe now says, Hey, you know what? I told my buddy about you, and I'm under the impression he ended up buying a house. Well, you didn't call me. Okay. So we want to avoid those situations. And that's why calling them at least 4 times a year is really important. Now, texting, mailing, emailing, that's all bonuses. I don't want you to replace any of those with the calls. It's really vital and it's really important we understand that because everybody tries to cut corners. But I'm counting on you that you're not going to do that. Now, let's talk about where. The where is where do we keep our database? Now I'm gonna ask of you to keep this simple. Okay. Now again, remember, I'm speaking to an audience from basically somebody who got their license yesterday to agents that are doing over 300 plus deals a year. And even more so, because this is applicable all the way across the board. So of course you can get a CRM. But if I'm talking to somebody who just got their license, someone who doesn't necessarily have that revenue coming in, well, you can keep it from a simple standpoint. Okay. I've been very successful. And it's funny because even though I've had the most robust CRMs out there, there's been windows of times that I did not even know the password to my CRMs because my staff didn't want me to have it. Why? Because Robert has a tendency of screwing this up. So what I would do is I would keep it very simple. And what I mean by keeping it very simple is you can actually put this on an Excel spreadsheet. So what you would basically do is put their name, phone number, and if you want to put their email, that's perfectly fine. Now you'll also have some columns on an Excel spreadsheet where you're tracking these calls. When did you speak to them? Now, ideally, I'm going to keep it very linear from top to bottom, from A to Z, from one through whatever. And I'm going to track as to the frequency that I'm speaking to them. I'm not going to move over to the next round. Remember, it's a different topic. I'm not going to move over to that next round until I've completely called 100% of the people. When I move over to the next round, now I'm changing the topic. The other benefit is this, is when you are tracking all of the people in the Excel spreadsheet, what I would do is I would put at the very, very bottom, the last person on the list, is I would put that I need to call them by whatever 90 days are out. Okay, so it would give me kind of this sense of urgency because it's very common for realtors to actually call their database, but they don't call them 4 times a year. Or one of my personal favorites is that they'll have, for example, 500 people, but they call the same 100 people over and over again. I'm hoping that's not you. Okay. And then, as of course, a good coach will sit there and say, hey, are you calling your database? Yep, I sure am, coach. I'm calling my database. Well, a great coach is going to be able to track that because I'm going to say, okay, great. I'm glad you're calling your database, but how many people have you spoken with and how many people do you have left? And by when do you have to call them by? So now there's a little bit more organization in regards to that. What I'm also going to do is another thing. This was really helpful because we don't want to have the same list of 200 people as an example, year after year after year after year. Our job is to grow the list. Take the 200 and turn it into 250. Take the 250 and turn it into 325. Take the 325 and turn it into 450, as an example. Okay. So in that, what I would do is I would always identify whoever the last person was on the list. And by the time I've exhausted calling everybody, I'm going to be able to have a very clear indication as to how many people I added, whether it's 5, 10, 15, or 40, whatever that number is, from one round to the next round. Hopefully that makes sense. Okay. So again, I'm going to ask of you, if you're liking this, please subscribe, like, comment, and again, share. We're going to go over a couple more points. Now let's talk about the why. Why do we call them 4 times a year? Okay, why do we call? Why is Robert asking of you to call them 4 times a year? Well, there's a rule, and the rule is you should be able to get 10% return on your investments. What does that mean? If you have 200 people, you take the number 10% of 200, and that 200, or in this case, the 10%, that's 20. What does the number 20 represent? Well, that's 20 deals. Yeah, 20 deals. So here's what I want you to do. Okay. Now, obviously, you'll do this, and I'm hoping that you do this after the video, but I want you to create this list. In this list, I want you to go ahead and identify all of those people. Add them up. How many people do you have on that list? This is where, as a coach, I can always work on improving agents' bottom line. And I've had the good fortune numerous times where I've had the benefit of being able to help an agent. And I got to be careful with that because, I can only do so much. But sometimes I can unlock the key with certain people where they can double, triple, and even some extreme cases where people have actually quadrupled their income based on what I just talked about. Let me further elaborate. So as I'm helping a new coaching client and we're going through the process, getting to know where they get their business from, I will see somebody as an example that I go through this exact same exercise and I ask them, how many people do you have on your list on your database? And they'll say, well, I have 300 people. Okay, awesome. Good. So 300 of 10%, that's about 30 deals. How many deals did you do last year in your database? I did 12. Good. That's good. So you did 12 deals, but you should be doing 30. You are leaving basically 18 deals on the table. As you can see, just off of this example, if we do the right things, I can very likely double the agent's business just off of one source. We do the exact same thing, of course, with other sources. That's how we triple and even quadruple that agent's business. So the exercise I'm going to leave you with is, of course, put together this list on an Excel spreadsheet, put all of the people on there, past clients, family, friends, associates, and of course the vendors, as I talked about. And on that, I want you to take it one step further. And the one step further is I want you to be able to separate the husband and the wives as two separate entries. Why am I asking you to do this? Well, you have Joe is in construction, okay? And Joe has his friends, his coworkers, his poker buddies. And then you have Mary, the wife, who's a nurse, and she has her friends, her bridge buddies, and her, book club or whatever it may be. They have this very common circle right in between them. They know 80% of everybody, but the outer circles is the part where there's always room for improvements. Let me give you an example. I call Joe, go through the entire script. Joe says, no, Robert, I really don't know anybody. But little do I know, if I'm not doing my job, that Mary is talking to one of her coworkers. And as Mary is talking to one of her coworkers, Mary is sitting there, consoling one of her coworkers, talking about going through a potential divorce, or come to find out that, now she's pregnant and they're excited about the idea of growing the family. And Mary's sitting there saying, hey, well, I got a good realtor. He's a good friend of mine. His name is Robert. but we've already been there, done that. We've talked about that. So it's really important that not only do I speak to Joe, but I also speak to, of course, Mary. Does that make sense? Now, let's talk about the how. How do we get started? Okay, this is probably the biggest and most important point of everything that I just talked about. Why? Because unfortunately, agents will go through, organize, put people on the list, but they don't start. Now, on call number one, it's really important. You haven't spoken to this person in a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it may be. What I want you to do is on call number one is with what I call as an introductory courtesy call. And the introductory courtesy call, I just basically go through, Joe, hey, it's Robert. I was thinking about you. You know, I was going through my phone. I was in your neighborhood and I was just sitting there thinking about you guys. How are you guys doing? Okay. And then I small talk for a few minutes, not very long. Pretty courteous about that. But what I also do is I turn the page and I go, Joe, hey, you know what, man? I don't want another 2, 3, or 5 years to go by before you and I speak again. What I want to do is I want to check in with you a little bit more often. Is it okay if I check in with you maybe 3, maybe 4 times a year? Would that be okay with you and Mary? Awesome. Well, hey, man, I don't really want to take up too much of your time, but I did want to call, check in, say hello, and then don't worry, I'll call you back in a few months. Okay. Now, on this, what I basically did is I took the courtesy. I was basically, just being polite, being proper, and then reintroducing. What I did in that call, you'll notice that I asked for permission to check in a little bit more often. Now, this is huge. This is vital because now call number two is not going to be as awkward. You have to do that because if you don't do that, call number two will be awkward. What do I mean? Well, call number two. Here we go. Joe, hey, it's Robert, your realtor. Hey, man, I gave you a call. I promised you I was going to check in with you a little bit more often. And well, here I am. Just wanted to see if I can borrow you for a few minutes to talk a little real estate. See how that actually flows? Now, it's really important. If I don't do what I said in the first call, which is basically, is it okay if I check in with you? Then it kind of becomes a little bit awkward and a little bit clunky. Now, let's go back to the first call here real quick. This is really important and really vital because another thing that unfortunately ends up happening is you call these people and you get stuck in these 30, 45-minute calls, right? And then you get off the phone and you're sitting there saying, man, that was actually pretty cool. It was nice to reconnect with Joe. And Joe says very likely the same thing. Man, that was cool. That was nice of Robert to check in. Here's the problem though. After and then on call number two, I now give Joe a call. Remember, I just spoke to him 2, 3, 4 months ago, and we were on the phone for about 45 minutes. So now on call number two, Joe picks up his phone and he goes, oh, it's Robert. Cool. Um, yeah, I really don't want to be on the phone for 45 minutes with them. Right? So we have to be careful on those calls. So what I'm going to say is 10 minutes max. I don't care how deep you go into this. Okay. Because now, let's say, for example, I'm not saying to cut them off. Okay, it's 10 minutes. I got to go. But what you're going to do is Joe, hey, I promised you I was going to keep it very short, very brief. And you know what? I got to get back to work. I have a client waiting for me. I have to make a call, whatever, whatever, whatever. Can I call you back later? If you want to do that, feel free. You'll notice that 9 out of 10 times, even if you do that, they'll sit there and say, hey, don't worry about it. It's fine. It was nice to catch up. But the key is, of course, to be in that position. Okay. Now, let's talk about adopting. Okay, this is a really important point. What do I mean by adopting? If you have children, if you're part of an organization, if you are surrounded by just a group of a bunch of people and you want them to be a part of your database, well, you can do an adopting. And the adopting is basically, let me use an example. So I have my son, Timmy, who plays on a soccer team. I just happen to be one of the assistant coaches. And then there's 10 other families besides, my son, Timmy. What I can do is I can give every single one of those people a call. Sally, hi, this is Robert, coach. Our sons play together, blah, blah, blah. And the reason I'm calling you is because I wanted to see, or I don't know if you know, but I'm in real estate and I was curious to know, do you have a go-to realtor? And Sally says, oh, yeah, I have a friend in the business. Well, at that point in time, I can go in the direction of, well, is your friend giving you market updates frequently? Well, we know the answer to that. The answer is going to be not really. Well, is it okay if I check in with you from time to time? Or the other way around. Sally, hey, it's Robert. Kids play together, and just curious to know. I don't know if you know if I'm a local realtor, and I was curious to know if you have a go-to realtor. Oh no, I don't. Well, I'd love the opportunity to earn your business. Is it okay if I check in with you from time to time and give you some real estate updates, so on and so forth? You get my drift? I don't want to go in too much into the depthness of that, but I did want to talk a little bit about the adopting. Okay. Now, in this, we have a couple of different options in regards to the direction we're going to go. The last thing I promised, of course, was the bonus point, and that is if. Now, if you do this, going back to the original question, have you ever realized how some agents create sustainable business month after month after month after month, or year after year? If you do this with what I'm talking about, it's going to create the opportunity for those peaks and the valleys to not be so peaky and not so valley-y. Okay. And this is how, instead of being in real estate, if you're not a bigger producer, you're an agent that's doing 8, 10, 12 deals a year, where it avoids from the roller coaster ride, where you go 0 deals January, 0 deals in February, 0 deals in March, and then all of a sudden, bam, you get 4 deals in April. And then you get 0 deals, and then 1 deal, and then 0 deals, and then bam, 2 deals. It keeps you from being on this roller coaster ride. Everything starts to become a little bit more of an even level playing field. I'm hoping that this information, of course, was helpful to you. As always, I'm going to ask of you to please subscribe, please like, please comment, and of course, last but not least, if you can actually share this video, I'd really appreciate that. Your favorite coach here, Robert Villanueva. As always, I'll see you at the top.
Hi, everyone. Robert Villanueva here.